Hi everybody, this is Celeste. I'm a nationally certified interventionist. I'm a recovery coach and I'm also a family coach. And last week we talked about unhelpful thinking styles, and I recommend that you go back and watch that video so you can get a better idea of what we're talking about today. But I'll do a quick recap on some of the unhelpful thinking styles that we talked about last week. So there's being your own worst critic, there's putting a negative slant on things or having a negative mental filter, putting a gloomy view on the future or making negative predictions, jumping to the very worst conclusion or catastrophizing, having a negative view of how others see you, or mind reading. So thinking that other people are thinking the worst of you, taking unfair responsibility for things, and making extreme statements or rules such as always or never or should, must, ought to, are some common ones there. So we're going to start to talk about changing some of these unhelpful thoughts. And so I want to use an example of being your own worst critic. And I'm going to actually pull an example of something that happened to me today. So I got to work after lunch and I needed something out of my wallet. I need to check my healthcare number so I can make a doctor's appointment. And I realized I didn't have my wallet with me. So of course I'm freaking out and thinking, oh my gosh, what if I get pulled over by the police? So there's a bit of catastrophizing there. What if I get pulled over by the police on my way home? I couldn't find it, so I'm freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to cancel my credit cards. I've got to, do all these things if I've lost it. So I'm trying to retrace my steps, and, I knew I had it yesterday, so I'm kind of trying to retrace and think of where it was. So I'm panicking a little bit, and I get home and I'm looking for my wallet, can't find it. And then I find it in my dish drying rack in my sink. So a lot of times our first natural reaction is when we've done something like that is to judge ourselves really harshly and think, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. Like, who would put that there? What an idiot. Like, who does that? And start to have some of those thoughts. And so even in that moment, I really had to be cognizant that I wasn't talking to myself that way, right? Like, how do we talk to a friend? Like, we wouldn't say that to a friend. If a friend did that, we'd probably just have a good chuckle about it, which is what I did. I just, how did my wallet even end up in the dish drying rack? Like, that's just so silly, right? Like, so I was able to have a really good laugh about it and not judge myself too harshly. But I mean, that was something that I had to do a lot of retraining my brain on, because that was definitely something that I used to do a lot of. So that's a very common one. And now you're probably asking, how does this apply to addiction? How does this apply to me helping my loved ones? So I do have another good example of even the catastrophizing. So I know a lot of people who have loved ones in addiction have a hard time setting boundaries and saying no. And catastrophizing is a huge part of that. It's, if I say no to lending them money, they could go rob and steal and get it elsewhere. They could hurt somebody. If I say no, there's going to be a big conflict. They're going to be name calling. They're going to be screaming at me. They could get physically violent, and all this catastrophizing going on. So really, what the work I do with people is really starting to challenge those thoughts and how valid are they in reality, right? So if the person in addiction comes and asks you for something, really breaking it down into past behaviors. Have they gotten angry before? Have they gone out and robbed somebody before? Have they stolen money before? So, and the answer might be yes in some of these cases. So even just having to rethink some of your own thoughts about that, and it might be part of the unhelpful thinking style of unfairly taking responsibility for things. And sometimes these thought patterns don't just fall into one unhelpful thinking style. So we really have to examine some of the realities of our thinking. So if your loved one, if your fear of saying no and catastrophizing is thinking that they're gonna go out and rob somebody, that could be legitimate, right? But then you're also unfairly taking responsibility for that. It's not your responsibility if your loved one chooses to rob somebody at gunpoint and potentially hurt them. Yes, it would it would be horrible, right? It would suck for everybody. I'm not going to minimize that, but at the same time, not taking responsibility of that, and even too the catastrophizing of maybe they're going to get mad, they're going to yell, they're going to scream, they become physically aggressive. Is that something that in the past they've done? And with somebody in addiction, that very well could be a possibility. So has that been their past behavior? And questioning that. If it isn't, then that's something that we cannot worry about, and still confront the person or say no and not be afraid of that confrontation. But on the other hand, if that is their past behavior, is to yell and scream and get mad and verbally abusive and verbally aggressive and potentially physically aggressive, we can do things to help keep you safe in those situations. So you might want to consider your conversations and interactions with them, keeping your physical interactions with them to a minimum, and try to just have conversations over the phone. So if you do have to say no to something that you don't want to do, you don't want to enable them, you want to set a boundary and you're afraid of them getting mad and screaming, you can always say to them, I can't let you speak to me this way, and if it continues, I'm going to end the phone call. And if it continues, then you end the phone call. And it can also take that physical aggression out of the equation for you. So if you're worried about them becoming very physically aggressive, then that's not going to be as much of a factor if you're on the phone. So these are a lot of the rationalizations and questioning the validity of our own thoughts that we start to do in family coaching, so that you can start to adjust your thinking, which will adjust your behaviors, and then your behaviors will become more helpful to the person that you love in addiction. So what you're going to want to do is, if you want to get into my family coaching program, I'm going to post the link that you can go to fill out the application. So click the link, fill out the application, we'll talk, we'll come up with an individualized plan specifically for you. This isn't a cookie cutter program. I custom design it for you and your needs and your goals. So click the link, fill out the application, let's talk. Have a good night, everybody.